All right, welcome everyone. We might just wait a couple more minutes so everyone who's at the door lining up can take a seat and we'll get started tonight.
Is the sound okay from the mic for folks in the back?
We're doing all right? Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all so much for coming out here tonight. We're really excited to be kicking off the 4th stakeholder engagement meeting of Indiana's Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. As we know, this is a really significant opportunity for the state, and it really means a lot for us that you all came out here to share your voice with us tonight. It's really so valuable to help us in the planning and implementation of this grant. So I want to get started with a few introductions. First, I want to welcome the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. They were the recipients of this grant, and they will be stewarding it through the planning and implementation process. The Chief of Staff is here tonight. She'll be welcoming us in just a moment with some words of welcome. I also want to introduce the team that will be helping to steward this meeting tonight, and we'll also be doing some of the quantifications behind the measures that I've been identifying and that you will help us identify. My name is Noah Godfrey. I'm an associate at ClimeCo. We're a sustainability services company that works across various sectors of Indiana. I'm joined here tonight by Kamini and Caroline. We're at your disposal, so please, if you have notes or comments, please let us know. We are here to take them and make sure that we can do our best to implement them into this plan. One quick housekeeping note. You'll see we have a recording device here. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted online. So 2 quick asks of everyone. If you wouldn't mind keeping side conversations down to a minimum, that would really help our friends online be able to hear all the dialogue. Second, if you don't want your comments to be posted publicly, you can write them on a note card or share them with the IDIM website that we'll have on the screen shortly. To ameliorate that situation. But without further ado, I'd like to have the Chief of Staff come up and say a couple words.
I'm sort of a clumsy person, so the idea of all these cords and wires all around me is making me a little bit nervous. So I'm glad I made it up here. Okay, now it's just getting back down at the end. So good evening and welcome everybody. My name is Parvana Stover. I'm Chief of Staff for the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, or IDEM for short. With me today are staff in the back and on the sides from our Office of Air Quality and our Office of Communications. And I'm so happy that you all are here today to join us. Like Noah mentioned, this is the 4th in a series of public meetings that we are hosting to hear from community members and stakeholders alike about greenhouse gas reduction ideas and items plans for the EPA Climate Pollution Reduction Grant. The 3 meetings that we've already had, which I've attended all of them, we had a really great turnout, actually not as great of a turnout as we have tonight. And we've gotten really positive feedback from all the folks who have attended. And so I'm really excited to listen into the ideas that you guys have and hear what you guys have been doing in this part of the state. The planning work that you're helping us with today will give Indiana access to over $4 billion in grant funding from EPA that cities, companies, universities, and others can use to voluntarily lower or eliminate their greenhouse gas emissions. From an IDEM perspective, our goal is to promote sustainability, enhance our state's resiliency to environmental challenges, and safeguard our precious natural resources. I sincerely appreciate everybody's participation today, and we view this as just the start of a new and exciting collaboration. This is a really great opportunity for our state, and I'm glad to see so many of you guys interested in helping us with this process. So I will hand it back to Noah and our facilitators from ClimeCo to run through an overview of this effort and ways you can get involved. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Barbara. Well done. All right, so wanted to quickly run through a few of the agenda items tonight. First, we're going to go through the grant overview and where we are in the process. Next, we're going to open up the opportunities for participation and continuous engagement. And finally, we're going to open up the floor for public comment. Okay, so a little bit about the grant overview. Indiana was among 45 states who were awarded a planning grant by the EPA. This grant is allowing Indiana to create a list of priority actions that we're going to be testing with the community, making sure they fit right, and then we'll be submitting them to the EPA for the implementation grant. This will allow us to compete for $4.6 billion of federal funding. So your voice is so important in this planning process. And again, thank you for being here tonight. We can't do this in silo. There are so many organizations that are key for this grant success. A few of the logos up here are the cohorts of intergovernmental agencies that will be helping to steward this grant across the finish line. But there are so many more, and many of you are here representing the groups out there tonight. We just want to make sure that this is an effort that reaches across all communities of Indiana, and we're really excited for you all to be here. So here's where we are in the timeline. So the priority action plan is due March 1st. We will be identifying a series of actions that have three main goals. First is benefiting communities, the second is creating jobs, and the third, of course, is reducing pollution. We'll be submitting those actions for the implementation grant that's due in April. And just so you know, we can still expand upon those after the implementation grant towards the comprehensive action plan. So we have lots of time to be able to make sure that this is really the right fit for Indiana. So here's where we're at in the timeline today. We're at the fourth of our stakeholder engagement meetings with at least one more on the docket. This is also working concurrently with two other efforts for data input. We have a survey that you'll see around the room with QR codes. We really entreat everyone here to take the survey tonight, share it with your friends, your kickball leagues. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. Also, we have an email address that we want your feedback on our priority actions. So please, we need your feedback to make sure this grant is competitive and successful. So as I mentioned, we have three criteria or goals that we need every action that we identify to be able to encapsulate. These three are benefiting communities, creating jobs, and reducing pollution. You're going to hear me say these three over and over again tonight, so just bear with me. An example of the kind of action that would encapsulate all three of these would be a retrofit for housing. So the homeowner would be able to save energy while also saving money. So once we submit this plan to Indiana, we'll be eligible to compete for the $4.6 billion. So we need to make sure that all of the pieces of this really fit together well. One of the main priorities of this is the benefiting communities. We need to make sure that we prioritize low-income and disadvantaged communities throughout the planning and implementation process, as this grant does align with the Justice 40 initiative. So that is one of our key objectives throughout this process. Additionally, for a really competitive grant, we need to make sure that all of our actions are hitting Indiana sectors that have high emissions. So three in particular that we definitely want to touch on, of course, are the power industry, and transportation. A competitive plan will make sure we focus on those. And of course, we'll touch on the others, but we definitely want to make sure we have the best chance for success. Okay, so before I share our priority draft actions with you, I want to kind of walk through how we got to them. So we started by screening 50 community, corporate, and state level best practices. And then we filtered them by how well they benefited communities, their job creation potential, their potential to reduce pollution, And then finally, we wanted to make sure that they were relevant to Indiana. So one thing I really want us all to take away from before we see the priorities is that these are draft actions. We didn't want to come to you empty-handed tonight, so we identified a few, but we need your feedback to make sure that these align with your communities, that they fit your expectations. So just want to preface that these are draft actions. So the first action that we identified is amplifying Indiana's clean energy availability. This could be through accelerating renewable energy development, such as rooftop solar, wind, while also launching energy storage pilot projects. The second draft action is enhancing energy efficiency and household savings. So this is similar to the example I gave a little bit earlier, where we could introduce housing retrofits that are saving households money while also reducing energy costs. This could be insulation upgrades, for example. The third is around reducing air pollution and improving health. So this is all around amplifying electric vehicle transition. So this could be through purchase subsidies or expanding the electrical vehicle charging grid. Our fourth draft action is all around enhancing personal mobility and access to transit. So here we're focused on public transit, enhancing rideshare availability, going to regions that previously might not have had access, dedicated HOV corridors, and the list goes on for sure. Our last draft action is recapturing materials and reducing waste. One of the best ways to reduce emissions is to make sure just to reduce waste. So these programs could be household composting programs or industrial composting programs. Yeah, really making sure that we focus on keeping waste out of landfill. So we have a few additional actions. I mentioned that we identified 10. The first 5 are our priority. The second 5 are still in draft. I'll just quickly run through these before we kind of move forward. First is increasing carbon sequestration through renewable agriculture methods. Second is expanding low carbon energy, electrifying industrial processes, reducing industrial emissions, and finally increasing renewable natural gas. So I want to identify a few different ways that you can engage through this process. The first is we would love for everyone to explore the information hub that we've built on IDEM's website. You can go through and explore all the 50 draft measures that we identified, see the quantification, see how we reference them. And we would really love your feedback on those and to see what you think of our 5 priority measures. Do they fit your expectations? Will they fit the communities that you're a part of? Second, if I have one ask for you tonight, it would be to fill out our survey. We want as many voices a part of this as possible. So please fill it out, share it with your friends and family. Finally, here's our contact information. And we also, if you have any ways that we can help you with, surveys in different languages, that sorts of things, please let us know. All right, so I'd like to open up the floor for public comment. Wanted to set just a few kind of ground rules before we get started. First, I just want to make sure that we keep the conversation respectful, so we can really make sure that we have a productive dialogue. Next, we have 5 minutes allocated for everyone to speak. Kalani will be raising her hand at the 30-second mark, so keep an eye on that. We have a hard stop at 8 p.m. as the library is closing, and we want to be respectful of their time. So we want to get to as many comments as possible tonight. Fantastic. Oh, one more thing. Yeah, if we are able to quickly answer your question here tonight, we'll be happily able to. If it requires a little more comprehensive a response, we'll be posting it online. Just want to preface with that. So thank you guys so much. And we would love to open up the floor for public comment. We already have a brave undertaker. So
Oh gosh, I just had to raise my hand.
If we can set one more request to state your name and any affiliation you may have and your Zoom code if possible, so we can be sure we're tracking, representation across the state and who we're hearing from.
Last time that happened to me, so I'm glad it was
So my name is Randy Ball, and I'm Vice President of Southwestern Indiana Citizens for Quality of Life. I was born and raised here in Ferdinand, and I'm proud to call it my home. Noah, can I ask you a quick question?
yes, sir.
So you're with a private company, is that correct?
We are.
Why?
Why am I with a private company?
Yeah.
Or like why are we here?
Why isn't the state doing this work?
We partnered with the state to do this work. We're helping
I
them with,
understand that.
yeah.
I know, I was just curious about why Indiana didn't do it themselves, but
I don't know if I can speak to Indiana's intentions for hiring us, but we're here to help. We're here to answer questions.
Okay.
I can answer that quickly now, if that's all right. And all of the folks here from IDEM have full-time day jobs that don't relate to implementing this grant. And this grant is such a huge undertaking and has such tight deadlines set by the EPA that we needed to contract with private help to be able to make sure we could take advantage of this opportunity.
okay.
If left to our own devices for our own staff to be able to do this, we would have had to decline the grant opportunity.
Really?
So I
Okay.
hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, so I'm gonna read my statement. I was involved in a 6-year effort to, can you hear me? Everybody can hear me? A little closer. I was involved in a 6-year effort to prevent the construction of a coal to diesel plant in nearby Dale, Indiana. This plant involved a chemical process that had never been done in the United States and had only been performed by entities like Nazi Germany when they did not have access to oil. It's a filthy, polluting process, and it would have emitted millions of tons of CO2 every year. My group's battle was not just against Riverview, the sponsoring company, but against IDEM, who seemed to support Riverview's effort every step of the way. To my knowledge, IDEM never questioned the legitimacy of the coal to diesel scheme. It only wanted the paperwork to be filled out properly. What's worse, the head of IDEM is appointed by the governor, who famously met with the Riverview president on a trade mission to Switzerland. We were told that the governor told the head of IDEM to quote unquote, make this plant happen. In 1972, I had a summer job mowing lawns at the Ferdinand State Forest, just a few miles from here. And when the political party changed to the Republicans, I lost that job. I lost the job pushing a lawnmower for 275 cents an hour because of a change in statewide political party. So don't tell me that politics doesn't matter at IDEM. I know it does. Despite all the odds against us, Southwestern citizens won the battle against Riverview, and the plant will not be built. But it begs the question, why does Indiana and IDEM think that the battle is industry versus the environment, when in fact it could be industry because of the environment? Indiana has a long history of worker-friendly and industry-friendly practices. We can have a history of environmentally practices as well. I think it's important to note that our group has been fighting for environmental protection for 6 years, and we won a critical battle. We deserve a seat at the table. The problem we face is local support. Everyone is either tied to fossil fuels, knows someone in fossil fuels, or has a client/customer in fossil fuels. We need a way to make it profitable for people to move from fossil fuels. My group may have won the battle, but we are losing the war. Indiana is in bed with polluters. This has got to stop. Our industries have got to know that this is not a place where they can pollute. How about changing your name to the Indiana Department of Environmental Protection? Just a thought. Other states are attracting industry because of environmentally friendly practices. Indiana has a big hurdle to jump in this regard, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't start trying. We can leverage all we have going for us with a commitment to the environment and really put our state on a sound foundation for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please, welcome.
Hello, my name is Jane Melchior, and I live in Jasper, Indiana. I have been a long-time advocate for clean air and water regulation, though I'm no longer part of an organized group where I'm loosely connected. But I have been a long-time advocate for clean air and water regulation for sensible farming practices and other land use patterns, and for forest protections, all of which are deeply interconnected and necessary to sustain all life. Indiana has a very low environmental ranking in air quality, water quality, etc. Likely because, among other things, this state is also a leader in manufacturing of diverse kinds, and a good many of these emit large quantities of toxic pollutants, which are damaging the health of people and the livability of the planet. I am aware that many people, including agencies which advocate for the health and well-being of the people in this state, have lost trust in IDEM and other governmental agencies. And I speak for many who would like to see the taxpayer-supported agencies regain the trust of the people who count on them to provide adequate information about what goes into the air, water, soil, etc., and to carefully regulate emissions according to the highest possible good of all living creatures. Because clean air and water and non-destructive farming practices are essential to the health and quality of life for all people, maintaining high standards should be primary concern of all agencies and supersede industry demands. For IDEM, the following are primary concern. Install way more air quality monitors and rely less on industry reporting. Rigid enforcement of laws and better interagency coordination, as well as more coordination with various health and environmental advocacy groups. A focus on natural carbon sequestration, such as more old growth forests and green spaces, better wetland protection, soil conservation, and less toxic farming practices. Support for public transportation, rail, and walkable, bikeable communities rather than building new highways. Limiting permits for mining and fossil fuels extraction, as well as their use in Indiana. A mindfulness that any plan to mitigate the effects of the changing climate will involve curtailing energy use. Unlimited growth is not possible on this finite planet. Thank you very much for hearing my concerns and recommendations.
Thank you. Please.
Yeah, good evening. I'm Stephen Stewart, and I'm the Hoosier National Forest Program Director for Indiana Forest Alliance. We're a nonprofit statewide organization founded in 1996. We are dedicated to the long-term health and well-being of Indiana's native forests. We applaud the state's efforts to develop a climate action plan and want to address two topics, though, that seem to be missing from the consideration so far. Forests as carbon sinks that can mitigate our emissions, and transportation corridors that will increase our carbon footprint. At this unique time in human history, Indiana needs to both reduce emissions and maximize carbon capture. Indiana's economy is contributing to climate change, producing more greenhouse gases than most other states because of our heavy reliance on coal for electricity and our steel industry. Indiana is the 8th in the nation per capita energy use and ties for the 5th place among all states for carbon-intensive energy supply. Because of our disproportionate contributions to greenhouse gas emissions, Indiana has a responsibility to do more than other states, according to address climate. Forests are an important natural solution to climate change. In fact, forests are the best proven technology we have for capturing carbon. While scientists are searching for ways to store carbon underground, these methods are still experimental and unproven. Trees have been doing this for millions of years. According to the International Panel on Climate Change, keeping climate change in the range of 1.5 degrees Celsius goal will require massive forest reforestation to remove excess carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Reforestation and improving forest management together have great potential to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Scientists estimate these natural climate solutions could provide 18% of cost-effective carbon capture through the year 2030. Forests actually help reverse the impacts of climate change as well. Forests are carbon sinks, areas that store more carbon than they release. Trees use solar energy to capture carbon dioxide from the air. Ultimately, the carbon ends up in the wood, leaves, roots, and the soils. Globally, forests provide green infrastructure that removes a quarter of the CO2 that we humans add to the atmosphere, keeping climate change from getting worse. Wetlands and even croplands can also be carbon sinks as well, but forests capture more carbon than most other ecosystems. And while trees store carbon in their trunks and other tissues, the majority of forest carbon is stored underground. Protecting our existing forest must be a top priority. These forests are providing ecosystem services that are easily taken for granted, but that provide great value to Indiana residents. In fact, in the face of extreme summer heat, forests help cool the land. They provide shade, but they also provide a kind of natural air conditioning that cools temperatures well beyond their shade. Forests can help absorb stormwater that is expected to increase with climate change. Tree canopies slow down rainwater, reducing the impacts on soil and minimizing erosion. Humus and duff on the floor of the forest and tree roots absorb stormwater. Some trees absorb up to 150 gallons per day. Plus, tree roots hold soils and stream banks in place, and forests, especially forested wetlands, act like sponges to store stormwater and reduce flooding. Trees also remove air pollutants, buffer noise, and provide wildlife habitat. Above all, forests can help mitigate climate change impacts. Climate change is already resulting in weather extremes, with more severe precipitation events and more precipitation overall, especially in the fall and winter months. These co-benefits of forests are especially important in urban areas as well, where most of our population resides, including some of the most disadvantaged populations, as is a major focus of this project. Cities also tend to be heat islands because of all the asphalt and concrete absorbs heat, so urban forests are especially important. Our state and national forests are currently managed largely for timber production, though, under plans that are expired and woefully outdated. But our forests are worth more than standing. The carbon capture and co-benefits of the forest provide are more important than timber production. Managing our forest lands for maximum carbon sequestration, not just the agricultural, as was mentioned in your presentation, is one of the best ways to counterbalance our emissions. This means managing forests without timber harvest or with much longer harvest rotations. It is imperative that saving our older growth forest, not old growth, those as well, but older growth forests, and increasing our forest acreage statewide be part of Indiana's first ever climate action plan. Now I'm going to shift gears a bit and talk about roads and transportation corridors. The state is currently considering a mid-states corridor in the area highway that would extend and expand a transportation infrastructure that is already causing a huge chunk of Indiana's emissions, 21%, according to their chart. New highways will have an enormous carbon footprint during the construction phase, as well as ongoing maintenance and routine use of that highway, as well as having secondary effects of increasing the draw for development and the prices of that land going up to where those private landowners cannot afford to purchase forested land to save it for carbon sequestration and other uses to combat climate change. As well as an addition of these, like the link, link 109 in the southwestern part of the state, as well as the mid-states corridor. Both of them will destroy many acres of forest and farmland that could be capturing carbon. So again, thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for coming.
I certainly will. Also, as an organization, we'll be submitting more comments before the deadline of November 30th. I believe that is that the date.
Amazing. Yeah,
It is
yeah,
very
we appreciate that so
excellent.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you for your feedback and we really appreciate your perspective.
Yes, thank you. You have to stay put. Oh, pardon me.
Sorry, guys, careful on all the cords.
Be sharp. Is that good? Yeah. I have a question real quick. I'm Mary Hess with Southwestern Indiana Citizens for Quality of Life. And you mentioned before that you were thinking about another meeting because we have noticed that Indianapolis and North has 3, and Southern Indiana just has this one, which is like an hour and a half to any major city in Southern Indiana. So we kind of feel like the word needs to be gotten out more. So will that next meeting be in Southern Indiana?
Let me get back to you on that. If I could just get your email, after this, we'll make sure to update you and everyone here with all the updates, that are coming with, 1 to potentially many more, meetings.
Okay.
And we might even have them virtually as well, so we can have as wide a participation as possible. So a couple
Okay.
options on the board.
Okay, all right. Again, I'm Mary Hess, President of Southwestern Indiana Citizens for Quality of Life. Congratulations on the grant, and we appreciate you having the meeting here tonight. Our group is very much concerned about toxic emissions. And as of the October 23 toxic emission report from the EPA, Indiana stands at number 49, I'm sorry, second in the country for toxic emissions per square mile. And that concerns me a lot. And according to the US News Best rankings, Indiana is number 50 in natural environment, air and quality, air and water. I'm sorry, get my words here straight. Air and water quality from this report stands at number 35, and pollution stands at number 49. For 5 years, we fought to prevent a toxic refinery from coming to our area, and it would, according to their air quality permit, emit over 2.2 million tons of greenhouse gases annually. Since we are at number 2 on toxic release and number 49 on pollution, we feel IDEM needs to focus on not permitting industry that will continue to add to this horrible ranking. One of the major contributors of climate change is fossil fuels. IDEM needs to stop contributing to the problem when permitting industry to add to the problem. The state of Indiana spent 13 years courting Riverview Energy with nothing to show for it. It took local citizens at the grassroots level to continuously send IDEM information about what was not happening with the permit to finally get them to act and revoke their permit. I realize that you've been cutting funding, but you cannot allow industry to regulate themselves. This refinery should not have ever been permitting, according to some of the science-based comments against the project. This brings me to my question, which you kind of had in your opening statements. With the climate action plan, will you continue to permit fossil fuel industries that will continue to add to the problem? Or will IDEM, along with the state of Indiana, make the bold move to protect all Hoosiers and make the move away from fossil fuels? With the rankings the state has received, this should be your first move. Also, since there are many active environmental advocate groups in the state, and with a lot of them being here tonight, will IDEM reach out to them and give them a seat at the table at the climate plan? Because this is great, you're taking our comments, but we'd like to be part of it moving forward. And I did notice the state of Indiana Health on the people who are sponsors. Are there health officials on this committee along with on the planning committee?
Yeah, I can answer that. We do have a working group made of folks from other state agencies. So Department of Transportation is represented, Health is represented, Natural Resources, Agriculture, some of our sister agencies, just to get their perspective as well. So yeah.
Okay. I truly believe, our group truly believes that environmental advocates are your eyes and ears in our communities. And if you leave them out of this plan, you're silencing the people your agency is responsible for protecting their health and quality of life. And this plan will not be for Indiana if you leave us out. It will be only for industry. So you've answered my 2 questions, and I appreciate you taking my message.
Thank you.
My name is Joel Schulteis. I'm a volunteer with the Sierra Club Luther chapter, and I live in Evansville. Thank you for holding this public meeting and giving us the opportunity to comment this evening. Those of you who are involved in drafting this plan have an unprecedented opportunity to secure funds to significantly reduce Indiana's greenhouse gas emissions. As you stated earlier, EPA has $4.6 billion to award, and that money will go to plans that are both ambitious and achievable. With this in mind, I encourage you to act on the following as you put this plan together. First, look for opportunities to push money down to local communities around the state, especially environmental justice communities. Many of them have climate action plans and know what they need to do. You will get a head start in implementation by partnering with them. Second, keep holding public meetings as you move forward in this process, including during the drafting stages of the plan. Listen to our input and let that inform your thinking. Third, take a serious look at applying for implementation grant funds to put solar and battery storage in municipal buildings and schools. This will be a win for everyone. It will lower energy costs for municipalities and school districts, reduce greenhouse gases, and employ a lot of Hoosiers. It would also instantly make those buildings more resilient and self-sufficient in the event of severe weather and power outages. You have a chance to do something significant for Hoosiers and for the state of Indiana. Please take advantage of the opportunity.
Thank you.
So Bill Keller, hope everybody can hear me all right. I don't have, well, as far as affiliation, just a member of the town here in Ferdinand, don't have any corporate affiliations or anything like that. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to anybody who fought the coal to diesel system and anybody who's fighting the new road they're trying to put in. But on top of that, I really think that anything to do with the environment, anything to do with anything really starts with people. So I'm going to second the notion that it rolls down to communities. Solar, not just for municipal buildings and for schools and all that, but you know, at the person to person level, if we're able to get some sort of subsidy to put in solar panels on a home to home basis. Same thing with, you know, you're talking, one of your slides up there was about compost pickup. If somebody has a yard available, compost, if done right, really isn't that terrible in the community. So just having, you know, the ability or education to run a compost pile, to plant something in your own garden, start up something in your home that would be able to be continued along instead of trying to focus all of the money into the, let's say, certain areas where maybe there's inefficiencies. You know, if you put it down at the person to person level, give them the education, the capability, I think some of that inefficiency comes away and those people are able to get more involved and actually care more at that point because they're working towards it themselves.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill.
I wasn't planning on talking, so, but my name's Steve Osborne. I just moved to Southern Indiana a few years ago. Previously, before retirement, I was the compliance monitor for the state of Indiana for weatherization. So my questions are kind of simple. You say that you're looking at possibly going in and trying to help people with energy efficiency. I don't know, the American Recovery Act that went, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, like $5 billion. They put strict guidelines on that run, which part of it, workers, physical workers, would have to get the, what do they call it? The union wages, which is fine. I don't have any problem with that. But anybody that worked in the program, they didn't get any addition. So if you do it, how are you going to do it? And generally, there's some kind of income qualifications for this kind of stuff. Do you know what income qualification you're going to allow for people to be able to be eligible for this
I give
stuff?
that back to you and say, what, do you have suggestions on what those should be?
Well, weatherization was 150%, which is not very much. I would hopefully say that you give more opportunity. I know I follow weatherization, energy conservation quite a bit. There is a program right now going through another department for like heat pumps. They're talking about, you're gonna have to go to classes, be certified. And only those people can put in these heat pumps. But if they do the work, the homeowner gets like a $8,000 off the actual cost, which is massive. But still, that's a lot of training being involved. And I listen, I've seen people do training in mechanical and weatherization. And I hate to see what some of them do without the training, so, but as far as alternate energies, there's a place up in Danville that they use a landfill and they extract methane gas and it produces a majority of their fuel or energy for up there. I understand there's 2 other places in Indiana that's going to this. I think that's a big opportunity for Indiana, because I know, because, we use, our power grid is up in Carmel, that's operated. It operates 19 states plus a part of Canada. If people knew how close we've come a couple times to having total blackouts because of different states and having to reroute, they'd probably fall over dead. So, but I think we need to look at somehow more local power stations. And when they talk about fossil fuels, eliminating it, I worry about that because there is a big push for replacing fossil fuels with ammonia. Our Rockport power plant down here, not long ago, they actually are using ammonia tanks to supplement the coal to reduce the cost. There's processes right now where they're actually looking at for trucks, semis. I mean, yeah, ammonia is kind of nice. It only extracts water as a byproduct. But if you have a problem, a leak with ammonia, you've got major problems. So you all have a major task. I just hope you go into it, thinking ahead and being prepared. So, it's pretty massive. So, but thank you. And I didn't write anything. I'm just
Thanks, Steve.
blabbing. Oh, I will ask one last question too. Someone talked about air quality. Does anybody ever look at their phone on the Weather Channel? Go down to air quality. I just in the last year, and I don't know if it's particular now because of all the farming and the dust going in, but it used to be rated as particulate matter 2.5. Now it's rated as particulate matter 10. That's 10 microns. Or smaller. I think this morning it was like 86. We have worse air quality down here than Indianapolis. That should say something. So, but everybody take a look at the phone and it tells you.
Just want to add to that. So one of the cornerstones is, we saw that in the wheel, is to reduce the air pollution. And we're not only looking at the GHGs, but we're also looking at criteria air pollutants. And that includes PM 2.5,
Yeah.
PM 10, lead, ozone, and others. So if this is a priority for you, please vote for it in the survey. And then give us ideas on, how to reduce that. Love to hear from you more on that.
A lot of it, I don't think farmers would like what I say.
That's the
But-
point, though. We want to hear from everybody.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're kind of.
Everybody's suggestions are bound to piss off somebody else. That's why we want to hear it all. I'm serious.
Yeah, the state does have problems and, hopefully y'all figure out who's gonna do the work. How you're gonna train them and pay them what they deserve for doing the work and making sure someone double checks. Big on that.
Thank you, Steve.
Hi, my name's Jean Webb, member of Sierra Club and speaking for myself as a resident of the state. I'm from Evansville and Evansville has a climate action plan. but its primary weakness is lack of short-term goals and transparency. I'd urge you to have metrics, goals, and a publicly accessible dashboard to view progress on the goals. One I would suggest under your sector buildings is to have Indianapolis and all of the approximately 30 second-class cities in the state to track the energy usage in kilowatt hours or CFUs, and also converting to carbon dioxide equivalents based on their fuel use. And to do that to the top 10 or whatever number you said of the highest usage municipal or school buildings. That would be a municipal building that you could probably get into this program by focusing on the buildings where the utility bill is paid with public funds. So it would also save taxpayers. And these metrics should be updated quarterly and set against reduction goals. Another suggested metric would be in your sector that you're calling agricultural and woodlands. Have the cities track quarterly their urban canopies so that they have a set goal to increase their canopies. And then the state should take that and consolidate the data from all these cities and report their progress against goals and make that publicly transparent so that we can see, it's happening. And the reason I would like for you to track the results in the energy usage converted to the greenhouse gas goals is that then you have what you're really after. Whereas if you're just saying, we're going to have a program to institute LED lighting, or we're going to institute thermostat controls or new HVAC systems. If one thing goes up, something else may go down. And so we're really looking for the total energy usage. So I really think having good metrics and transparent to the public and short-term goals would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Blair and I represent a group called Valley Watch. Pardon my Evansville crud. Valley Watch has been around since 1981. Our purpose is to protect the public health and environment of the Lower Ohio River Valley. We were involved in the establishment of IDEM in 1986. Since then, we've been at odds with them pretty much ever since. There's three things about this Indiana climate plan that I want to emphasize. One, IDEM should immediately require offsets on all new Title V permits for all greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, methane, etc. Immediately require offsets for new TV permits, Title V permits. They should also phase in offsets for the renewal of those Title V permits that have to come up every 5 years. The second thing I want to talk about is carbon capture and sequestration. There's a big push in East and West Central Indiana to develop carbon capture on a plant that we don't know if it's going to make ammonia. We don't know if it's going to produce power. It's Wabash Valley Resources, and they really are not being very clear, but they are going after millions of dollars of taxpayer money, some of which I suppose comes from Indiana, to capture their carbon and bury it underground. Well, there's no auditing on carbon capture. There's no way there. I know IDEM is not going to go out and put monitors up all around where the possible leaks could be of carbon dioxide out of that sequester supposed to be taking place. So it's a scam. Carbon capture and sequestration is a scam.
Here.
The Department of Energy and the Kentucky Center for Applied Energy, which is no liberal organization, I'll tell you, says that it costs an additional 50% to build, as far as capital costs, to build a plant to capture carbon. If you're building like a coal-fired power plant or a gas-fired power plant, an additional 50% of the capital cost. But it doesn't stop there. 25% to 40% of the energy that that plant is producing has to be consumed to capture the carbon and to put it, to transport it and put it underground. That makes it the most inefficient kind of proposition that you could ever have. The only reason carbon capture and sequestration, underground type of sequestration, is being suggested is as a way to keep the fossil fuel industry alive and successful. The third thing I want to talk about is nuclear energy. Nukes are the most expensive energy out there. Now, that's not always been the case because they've failed, they've gone bankrupt, and then they've reconfigured them somehow. People have bought them on pennies for the dollar, and they have become somewhat profitable. But unfortunately, most of the nuclear energy in this country is produced by investor-owned utilities that have their hands in the ratepayers' pockets. And they, like in Indiana, anything goes with the IURC. You can't, there's only been one or two since I've been dealing with this thing since 1981. There's only been one or two rate increases that in electric generation, at least, that the IURC has turned down. So, it's really important to look at the economics, both the current economics, the capitalization, and the future economics of the power that you're going to use to supposedly replace the power plants like Rockport that are going to be shutting down. But something else that's come up, just from watching your presentation, I saw a lot of contradictions. I saw you mention, we got to do more with composting, but then we got to keep organics out of the landfill. Okay, well, I'm not sure exactly where you're going to balance that out, but that's just one example. I've heard several tonight, and contradictions aren't the way to develop a plan. You don't do something over here that's going to offset it over here, so the net balance is zero. It just doesn't work that way. And part of the reason I've seen rooftop solar being promoted on this. Rooftop solar is being discouraged in Indiana by our legislature. How are you going to deal with the legislature? Are you going to go in and say, you guys got to do better? Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Tom Bogenschutz from Evansville, and also am part of an organization called Tri-State Creation Care. Although I'm probably speaking more for myself than that. I just want to build on John's statement about, I like your plan. I mean, it's impressive on that sense, but this is Indiana, and a good plan will always be aspirational, meaning, and I think it should pull us to that direction. But what I fear is the plan is being subjected to like a political inversion, where the least effective parts of the plan are sort of bones thrown in the direction. And then things like what John was speaking at become a major part of this plan, which, to me would be a failure and also would not put us in a good position to get the funding that we would like to be coming into our state. So I guess it's not so much, it's just an encouragement, a comment, trying to say, let's keep the plan aspirational that pulls us in the direction we want to go, where we have a strong sense of this is going to reduce Indiana's carbon footprint. Anything less than that, or anything that goes into the current political situation, I fear the outcome is not going to be to our favor. So just a comment about that. That's what I fear that will happen with this.
Thank you, John.
Hello, my name is Lanny Etheridge, and I'm from Evansville.
that the action plan will focus on climate. I hope that the action plan is actually going to focus on climate. So you get these three categories you start with. You got jobs and community, and climate's kind of at the end. Well, this is a climate plan. So if you do your climate reduction properly, the jobs will come and it will help the community. So I really want to see that focus. And projects included in the plan should significantly cut carbon emissions in a verifiable way, which is what several people have said. Clean and affordable renewable energy sources like solar and wind combined with battery storage should be preferred wherever possible. Projects that build environmental resistance and low-income communities should also be included, although those communities don't seem to have been invited much into these hearings. So you need to do more outreach. One thing too is you mentioned low carbon and renewable gas. These kind of things concern me. I'm not sure what the definition of low carbon is. We need to look at no carbon as much as possible. There are some things that may continue to require something else for the moment, such as the creation of steel, but you need to be pushing for solar and wind and things that are not just less as far as their emissions. So, for example, if you're looking at hydrogen, well, hydrogen, yeah, that just produces water, but how do you produce that hydrogen? There's a big difference. If you have green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, how is it produced? So you need to look at the whole cycle, not just what is emitted in here. So upstate too. Then, as somebody mentioned, Evansville did adopt its own climate plan in 2021, and I'd like that plan, those goals and actions to be included in the state plan, as well as more ambitious actions that the PCRG grants will enable. Particular actions I'd like to see in the state cap. I mean, some of these things kind of sound like they're all that you have in the plan. It sounds like all Indian big city. But there's still southern Indiana, you know, there is Evansville on the, you know, we came on, an hour to get here. Yeah, yeah. Well, everybody loves Ferdinand. They are definitely strong on this, but also to the east. So our needs may be different. You need to consider what the communities say and funnel the money to the communities. We need lots of EV charging stations added in downtown Evansville and at other major destinations in Southwest and Southern Indiana. I went to an event in Evansville in September called EVs for EVV, trying to raise interest in electric vehicles. And people were interested, but they were concerned that there was no charging stations. Investment in maintaining and expanding healthy forests. I agree with that. We need to have healthy forests in the city and also Hoosier National Forest and all the forests that are here in Southern Indiana that we are concerned about. This is good for the environment. Actions to expand regenerative farming. Farming is important in Southern Indiana. There's a lot of farmers interested. And there was a regenerative ag event held in Northwest Vanderbilt County a few years ago. Had quite a few number of interested farmers, even though it was during the harvest season. So you need to reach out to those folks and help them in that area. We need actions to encourage and require electrification of buildings and energy efficiency in buildings. Both new construction and retrofits. Electrification reduces carbon emissions, eases the transition to clean energy, and allows for more energy efficient appliances. So, yeah, please have the plan encourage the legislature. They don't have a plan of their own. They haven't voted on one. So encourage them to allow communities to require new building and to be all electric. Why not? Also, actions to expand solar energy. We need those for sure. Rooftop solar and battery, which can reduce energy costs for the homeowner, as well as reduce peak demand on the electrical grid and make it more resilient. Community solar should be available for those who cannot make use of rooftop solar. That's something you should also add, even though the legislature right now has not allowed it. But if you tell them it's something that would be useful, then they will listen. Net metering should be pursued. That's another area they need to listen to. And as someone else mentioned, I think statewide green schools, wouldn't that be great? All schools powered by solar energy. That might catch on, you know.
So I appreciate your allowing us to come here. It just would have been nice to have a couple more in-person hearings in Southern Indiana. In person is different than online. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Latcher. I am a local resident out by the Ferdinand State Forest and also a member of Southwestern Indiana Citizens for Quality of Life. I appreciate the opportunity to get to share ideas to create a healthier and greener state. As you know, as everyone has said, we are loaded with our super polluters in this area. I was really happy to see that you've got economic development as part of it. I would really love to see us having more green businesses in our area and promoting those kind of work opportunities as opposed to too many super polluters, because then we won't bring anybody in but more super polluters, and it sometimes feels like a little bit of a sacrificial zone down here. And I know we don't have to be. We're very nice rolling hills. We've got a beautiful interstate that can bring in all kinds of people. So I know we've got opportunities for green business as well as some of our super polluters. Also, I know it's been brought up already, just having more green energy for an accessible, affordable, and have it being encouraged. So having some incentives for solar. I mean, we have solar on our home and kind of feel like we're financially punished for doing so. And so unfortunately, it's not an economic decision, it's an environmental decision that we do that, and would wish that for everybody have that same opportunity. On the public transportation, as you see, we're very rural down here. And I think of all our senior citizens that work so hard to hang on to their driver's license because that's their only way to be independent. So any creative ideas of any kind of public transportation, I don't know, a countywide trolley, a little mini train that can connect us to urban areas, anything like that, I think would definitely increase the quality of life of all of our citizens, as well, especially our senior citizens.
Great idea.
Thank you. And then finally, like on the green space, trails, recreational opportunities for the state, absolutely love that. I know that we want to plant more trees. I live right near the Ferdinand State Forest, so we already have trees. I was really happy to see the DNR in there because I know that right now that little forest does not get used, and there's a lot of the little forests that don't get used for recreation as much, and so instead they're burnt and logged. And I feel like if we had an opportunity to create some of those forests into parks, and that would increase our tourism, increase recreation, and then maybe those would bring in funding that we wouldn't have to log and take out our trees. And as Stephen mentioned, they are easy pickings. They're right there. We don't have to do anything but just let them live. And then finally, I just appreciate this. I kind of feel like I've gone through a few environmental issues locally with different polluting sort of companies. And I kind of feel like this is like a do-over opportunity here to, instead of focusing on pollution, how can we focus on green? Because we, as a small community here, we have actually an advanced cancer care unit in Jasper, and it's amazing for the people that need it, but sadly, we have too many people that need it. Whether you look at industry, transportation, some of our health and wellness, regardless, we have an opportunity here to create healthier citizens, and I hope that you take advantage of that. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Norick. I'm the Indiana Program Associate with the national nonprofit Solar United Neighbors. I really do appreciate IDEM and the Kleinco team for holding these public engagement meetings. Just having discussions on developing a statewide climate action plan is truly unprecedented, and I'm excited to see some action in Indiana. Now, this is in sharp contrast to the setbacks we've experienced at the State House. As many here know, the regressive policies and distributed generation and refusal to even discuss climate change have really set Indiana behind nationally. So I've lived in Evansville for 25 years and I grew up in Gibson County for 23 years before that. Both my father and uncle worked over at the Old Bend Coal Mine in Pike County for many years. My brother-in-law still works at the Gibson Generating Station. And I've lived and worked near the A.B. Brown coal plant my entire life in Evansville. I could see the plumes coming out of the stacks every day as they drifted east across the city with the prevailing winds. And with that experience, I think I have a pretty good understanding of both city and small town life in Indiana coal country. Coal mine closures and population reductions in this area of the state are threatening small town existence. One of the many examples in Gibson County, where the only school in Francisco, a school where my mother taught and my wife and other family went to grade school, closed forever this year. It is a traumatic event for any community's survival. My genuine hope is that these federal investments can help turn things around by bringing back clean energy jobs and building wealth for those that have sacrificed a lot over the last couple of centuries to make sure the lights do come on. With that in mind, here are a few specific suggestions on the plan and observations about how you can improve the process going forward. First, the state's plan should support communities that have already created local or regional plans. These investments need to quickly flow to the communities that are permitted, are primed and ready to act. The priority plan should go after the low-hanging fruit. It just makes the most sense when time is of the essence. Direct the investments to communities with caps already in place and organizations doing the work right now on the ground, serving the folks highlighted in the Inflation Reduction Act that have continuously been left behind. Second, let's clearly support local solar in the plan. We are looking to build local ownership, control, and participation in the new energy economy. Local distributed solar does that, and I'm happy to see it listed as the first action in the slide deck on slide 11, and in actions 24 and 25 in the spreadsheet. I ask why is not also included as a tier 1 action in the methodology document. Building out a solar schools program is something else that I don't see listed in the draft action spreadsheet or the tiered actions. That also happens to be one of the best win-wins I can think of. The utility costs savings alone will help with tight budgets and might prevent school closures like what happened at Francisco Elementary. Renewable energy topics can also be integrated into the educational curriculum. Solar energy spans a wide range of STEM plus topics, and those can be taught with hands-on experiential learning. This could lead to job training program at the tech schools. I'll point out that your, as in everyone's perspective changes as an added benefit when you install solar in your home or in your child's school, or you're able to participate in a community solar project. You really start to think differently about energy. You're no longer just a consumer, you're a participant, not only with your energy use, but also in your neighbors. Topics like energy efficient appliances and EVs are just more meaningful when it's your electrons actually powering them. This leads to additional pollution reductions with home and transportation electrification. And you are building local wealth. For example, 1 kilowatt of solar increases the home value by $4,000, just 1 kilowatt. Not to mention the direct savings on utility bills. That is critical in areas with such high energy burdens as ours in Evansville and throughout southwestern Indiana. Plus, distributed solar technology is here now, and it can be deployed quickly. It is the cheapest and greenest form of energy generation that exists, recently surpassing fossil fuels. No new technology breakthroughs are needed. It is proven to create local, good-paying, skilled jobs in every part of the state. These are all the goals listed in the CPRG draft. Third, I hope you can clear up some additional confusion of the tier 1 and tier 2 draft actions listed in the methodology document with the ones in the slide deck. The very first action listed in the tier 1 doc is expanding utility scale renewables. That's not what the people are looking for. You won't find any CenterPoint customer or probably Duke customer that supports giving more incentives to that monopoly. Fourth, I also see a tier 2 action for utility scale blue hydrogen with carbon capture. We don't want to see any actions that support continuing to burn stuff that produces more carbon, or any actions that I would call mathematical pollution solutions, such as carbon markets. In closing, I do have a criticism of the CRPG process's lack of inclusiveness. Hosting this meeting an hour away from the major population center in this part of the state, Evansville, combined with a different time zone, as we all know, really put working folks in Evansville at a disadvantage of attending in person. Add on the additional burdens Justice 40 and low to moderate income communities have to deal with. And this location really shuts them out of a discussion that they're required to be a part of in the Justice 40 goals. An additional meeting in the southwestern part of the state could also be justified with the fact that we have a disproportionately high number of super polluting fossil fuel power plants located in our communities. At one time, there were 8 within 40 miles of Evansville. And as I understand, 40% of the state's electricity is generated in this area, and we only have 6% of the population. When you look at the Department of Energy's coal closure energy community map, there's a solid stripe of orange, Evansville to Terre Haute. We're often told that we live in the sacrifice zone due to our above average health issues and the resulting air and water pollution of those power plants. I think the sacrifice zone deserves an additional meeting. Thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Mark Nowatarski, and I'm with a volunteer member of the Sierra Club. I'm also the co-lead of the Coalition Against the Mid-States Corridor. A lot of the comments I had have already been stated, so I just want to bring up one item that I have here. And I don't know how it fits into a climate action plan, but I do think it is very necessary. And that's around the greatest need that I have found in this area of Indiana when meeting with our county council, our city councils, because I attend all the meetings, and even our state representative from the area, is the need to educate them on the real growing climate issues and the need for climate mitigation, along with the actions that the counties and the local communities can take. Because whenever I get in front of them and try to talk to them about the need for a climate action plan, they're numb. They don't know where to go. So somehow an education program that almost is mandatory for them to attend in order to get grant dollars is what I'm advocating for. Thank you.
Just had a couple of comments. My name is Greg Painter. I'm the Director of Sustainability for the Jasper Group. And anytime I see somebody mention sustainability, I always think that's good. And what is sustainability? Well, I can get on the board and write what everybody thinks it is. Everybody, it's all totally different. But sustainability is the social, the environmental, and the economic impacts that our product and processes have on planet Earth and its inhabitants. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be a manufacturer. This library has a print. Your house has a print. We all have our prints in that. And it's very hard when you start going from a sustainability standpoint, you think of it as that three-legged stool. But it's very hard to get all those legs equal. Sometimes that's a little bit shorter, but you can still sit on it without being afraid to fall down or fall out of your seat. So when you start working on things like these, I think you got to be very kind of to some extent open-minded and knowing you're not going to hit perfection. And when you say climate change, that automatically goes to the carbon economy, and we're already seeing the carbon economy coming into play. If you do business with the federal government, you have to report scope 1 and scope 2 at a certain level. If you do over this level, you have to report scope 3, and then LCAs, EPDs, carbon footprints, embodied carbon, and all that. That's all coming. When it'll get here, I'll probably be dead and rotten by then, but probably 50 or 60, 2050 or 2060. So that will probably calm a lot of the things that are going on that we could stay here for 2 or 3 days and talk about solar and talk about hydrogen, and talk about embodied energy and that. But I think you should be I definitely think you should have another meeting, or at least 2 or 3, because I was kind of, and I told you I was kind of disappointed. I figured there'd be 150 people here. And there is, I don't know if anybody, any county officials, any mayor or local officials. Was that, got one? Okay, so they need, in this carbon economy, when you get to scope 3, it's very difficult, and it's gonna require the whole state of Indiana to be on the same page. County officials, city officials, regional officials, state officials, and making sure that you get out an exact message and that everybody follows that to some extent. Don't be like the federal government, issue executive orders. And then I was in a meeting with the FAA, and they was talking, this was years back, on the green executive order they issued. So the lady said, well, what happens if I don't do this or don't want to fool with it? And I said, well, it's an executive order, so that's up to you. So her and all her people from the FAA got up and walked out. So you gotta have follow-up, and you gotta concentrate it, but you gotta let it have some flexibility, simply because what goes on in Fort Wayne is not the same thing that goes on here in Du Bois County. And realizing, I mean, Du Bois, I don't want to talk too long, but Du Bois County is in an excellent position for several things. But we do need to get those, businesses, large, small, retailers, service people, and get these in and get their input, and what are they being asked from customers, from their suppliers, from their supply chain, and trying to mold that all in, plus with the people, your inhabitants. So that's everybody that lives next door, and maybe everybody that lives 100 miles away, because those are your neighbors too. But trying to, get those all involved so that Indiana can have a program that they're proud of. And if you talk about the IRA, biggest entitlement program ever, if you're not getting money from it, you better figure out how to do it. Solar, I mean, they raised it up to 30%, so you can get 30% on solar again. And there's certain areas, if you left, somebody mentioned coal, if you live in an area that has a closed coal mine, you can get bigger percentages. If you use the prevailing wage, you can get a bigger percentage. So use that IRA both at the state level and even at the local level. And your businesses don't have to be a big business, it can be a small business. You can have a daycare and have 2 or 3 people. But use that. And solar's is the big key to scope 1 and your scope 2 energy factor. The more solar that goes up, whether it's 1 array to power your water heater, or 48 arrays to power your house, it's full electric. I mean, that's how the carbon footprint, metric tons of CO2 equivalent, somebody mentioned, is how it's measured. But that's gonna, 2050 or 2060, that's gonna be the judge. This product here, what is embodied carbon in this microphone? And whoever has the less is gonna be the winner. And that will impact everybody. Thank you.
Hey, before you sit down, you were talking about Du Bois County being an excellent candidate for carbon reduction. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, not necessarily carbon reduction, but in an area, if you take a pin, put it in the center of Du Bois County and mark a line that's 500 miles. Most cities are really located within 500 miles of us. So that's those scope 3 emissions immediately start going down for manufacturers, distributors, Walmarts and things like that.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about Du Bois County specifically. So.
No.
Okay.
My name is Rock Emmert, and I'm 47532, local resident. Also want to reiterate what a lot of people have said tonight about this meeting, its location, its time. There are a lot of people here tonight who just heard about this yesterday. Just by scrambling, word of mouth, the people on the ground, several environmental groups here. I sent out a bunch of emails and posted about 10 Facebook posts yesterday, and again about a half hour before the meeting tonight. And I don't know what kind of press release was issued, but my gut observation is it didn't reach the people it needed to reach, like the town council of Ferdinand did not know about this meeting until yesterday. And I don't know about Jasper's leadership, Tonyberg's leadership, and there should be, I agree, there should be 500 people at this meeting. It should be in an auditorium or have a lot of these smaller meetings, which I personally prefer. But anyway, we can talk after the meeting about how the PR for this meeting went down and why there's only one scheduled in a little town like Ferdinand, Indiana, in a little room. I'm grateful we're here, don't get me wrong, but my experience with IDEM has been horrible. Like John Blair and Randy and probably half the people in this room spoke publicly almost 5 years ago, next month, December 10, 2018, we had the executive director of the Indiana Academy of Pediatrics speaking about the science of that coal to diesel plan for Dale, 5 miles upwind from us, and Ferdinand's in the direct line of the southwesterly breezes. And we would have stood to smell like rotten eggs for decades if that had gone through. We had scientists, Randy's a chemical engineer, we had a chemist, we had Sisters of St. Benedict speaking, we had teachers, and we had children, we had singer-songwriters, we had moms, and it went late in the night. 46 of us braved that microphone to speak about why we didn't want this year. 6 people spoke in favor of it, 46 spoke against it, 257 submitted comments against it. A lot of them were highly educated doctoral individuals, and 10 spoke in favor of it. And several of those 10 stood to profit personally. And IDEM, summarily within a few weeks, we're going to go full steam ahead with this. So forgive me for being extremely skeptical that your IDEM mothership here, who is appointed by the governor of Indiana, who adamantly supported this coal diesel plant. I mean, it boggles my mind that we're here 3 months after we got word from IDEM that they pulled the plug on this plant in Dale only because people like John and Mary and Randy and many of us in this room spent hundreds of hours, maybe thousands of hours. I was one of the plaintiffs, and in my heart, I was representing this town of Ferdinand. It's tourism, it's Chris Kindlemore coming up, it's Folk Festival. I grew up and live here. My mom and dad are 93 and 94 and would have been downwind from this crud that would be in the air. If it were up to IDEM, they approve everything. Everything. And we are in the sacrifice zone. Look at the cancer rates, look at the special ed rates, which are over twice the national average here. There was a family in Bristow, 16 families in Bristow that came to Representative Lloyd Arnold, and we sat in this library room for 4 hours with Lloyd Arnold. And he said that these families came to him saying, we've got all these weird cancers. Can you please get some answers for us? And he said, okay, I'll try. And Lloyd Arnold told us that night he went to the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Indiana State Medical Association, Indiana State Board of Health, and they all threw up their hands and said, by design, these are appointed by the governor, what the governor wants, by design, there is no watchdog agency in Indiana whatsoever to answer your question. So sorry, 16 families with your weird cancers. And Abby, who's the leader of our monitor group that we're part of, told us at a meeting, well, damn, Rock, Bristow is downwind. You talk about those southwesterly breeze. Bristow gets a lot of the thermal inversions from the AEP power plant at AK Steel. Grassroots citizens can research that. She's a teacher at Perry Central. She figured that out because she cares and she's on the ground doing her due diligent thinking. Where's IDEM? As long as it's a state, a governor appointed position, how can we truly believe? And I'm not talking about you and you personally, any of you personally, but your boss is appointed by the governor. Here. The whole paradigm has to change. I'm super excited about this program. I want to see, this is selfish, but some of us have been talking about a trail between Ferdinand and the Ferdinand State Forest that parallels the highway, like Germany has everywhere, bicycle walking trails to promote exercise, health, greener way of living. And I'm not saying a lot of this money should go to this small community, but that would be awesome for this community. I'd love for the town to seriously talk about that. As Chris said, she and I have solar on our house. We paid dearly for that. And we have friends saying, how much is it? And then as soon as we tell them how much we paid, end of discussion. And then we find out right after that, Indiana pulls the plug on what little they were giving us for the energy we're turning back to the grid. When the meter's running into the grid during the day, we find out, well, sorry, you people got to pay more for the lines that you're using. So they reduce the amount we're being paid for the kilowatt hours we're putting into the grid. when other states are doing the exact opposite. That talk about that punishment aspect. And people say, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Well, morally, ethically, that's where our heart is, but most people can't afford to do it. We don't have children, which is the only way we can afford to do it. And the families with children should be the ones who should be able to do it. So the Ferdinand State Forest, Chris talked about a little bit. Why not Ferdinand State Park? Why walk the trails of the Ferdinand State Forest sometime and tell me that that's wise management and care of our beloved state forest? It's an eyesore. It's god awful. There's invasives coming up everywhere. Poplars are taking over when we were promised oaks and hickories. The science is oaks and hickories. We have a degree from Purdue. I have people with doctoral degrees that say what's going on in the Ferdinand State Forest is biologically, ecologically, extremely unsound. But because I have a 4-year degree from Purdue University, I know everything about managing the state forest. That's just not right. 226 scientists from around the state of Indiana, college and university, sent a letter to Governor Holcomb asking for him to reconsider the person he appointed to the state forester position and to totally rethink how our forests are being treated. And Stephen spoke eloquently about this. And the reaction was, well, we'll take it under advisement. Dr. Leslie Bishop delivered the letter to Governor Holcomb's office. 226 scientists signed the letter. And the upshot of that was, no, we're not going to listen to any of you 226 scientists to look at the state forests and how we're managing them, especially in this age of climate change. The litigation, by the way, Mary didn't touch on this, but Earth Justice represented us, and we estimate the bill was probably $300,000. Dr. Carlin, who's not here yet, she's driving only on no, I hope she can make it before time's up. She spent about $200,000 of her own money. Forest Park grad, by the way, Ferdinand, Indiana. State of Indiana basically booted her from the state because she was too vocal. She couldn't practice in the state. That's the climate for doctors in the state. They're afraid to speak up the truth about what's really going on here. State of Indiana probably spent about taxpayer money, about $300,000 to $500,000 fighting us in Dale. Your tax dollars hard at work. And in Jasper spent $750,000 fighting us on the biomass plant a few years ago when Norma spent $250,000 of her own money. Talk about resources, talk about energy being lost. And the 13 years Riverview's been courting the state, as Mary said, how much time and talent and energy could have been spent in something like this. So I applaud you for being here and for listening. But I want you to understand as employees, do you understand how skeptical we are? That in the end, big industry's got your ear, it's got the governor's ear. Indiana Economic Development Commission, coal, 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 and one non-coal entity, last time I checked. DNR, or leader of forestry, Jack Seifert, commercial logging, commercial logging, commercial logging. So even though there's a lot of attractive icons up there, those of us that have been in the trenches for years are well aware that in this state, because of our political situation, unless people get out and vote and start voting for children's health, for the environment, yeah, this is great. But I don't know that it's going to, in the long run, make that much difference. And lastly, it was 1930 something, help me out, Randy, the New Deal, FDR. This is probably the greatest windfall of opportunity for us since then, 90 years ago. That gave us, just to remind you, that gave us the Ferdinand State Forest, which we love and benefit from in a lot of ways. It gave us a lot of the area conservation clubs, which is another reason I think that trail out to the forest would be appropriate for this time. But anyway, I have a lot more in writing that I'll give to you after the meeting, but thank you.
Evening to you. My name is Bill Young, resident of the county, also associated with the Southwestern Indiana folks that you've been hearing from. I have not had a chance, other than 20 minutes ago, to start to even understand any of, some of the background. But I noticed it says climate pollution reduction grants. And it starts off saying Indiana is working to build a plan to benefit communities, create jobs, and reduce pollution.
They'll get closer to.
So one of the things I suggest is that you turn that around a little bit. In other words, the first thing, instead of talking about the benefit community, start off with to reduce pollution. And then it talks about create jobs. I assume we're talking about pollution reduction jobs, but we ought to say that. And then you need to add something that talks about Indiana public health. Because Indiana did something historical this year that it was historical, what they came up with, the Health First Indiana program. I think you mentioned, or one of you did, that one of your sister agencies is the Indiana Department of Health. Well, the Indiana, that they're going to put $75 million into talking about public health. They identified 22 key core services. Each of those core services are going to have key performance measurements. The metrics that we're going to have to, indicators that we're going to have to follow. Of those core services, they broke it 60%, 14 of those core services, they wanted 60% of the monies that your county gets to go to that. The other 8, they didn't want any more than 40%. And down in those 8 core services, it's things like, there is one that's called environmental. But when you look at it, it's environmental in the context of waste, pollution, public waste, sanitation, and food. We're not talking about environmental in the context of what impact it's having about cancer or anything else. So I would find it hard to believe that, I mean, this grant, I assume, will have something similar, that there'll have to be key performance indicators measured. I don't know how that how those measurements could not include public health, key core services. But yet, we'll hear a lot about, well, we know we put so many tons or thousands of tons of this pollutant into the air or this water. But go out and try to identify on a dashboard, out in the Indiana Department of Health dashboard, what the rate of, say, cancer, or whether it's any of the diseases that are affecting, or the infections that are affecting a lot of our people, whether it's palsy, whether it's cancers, whether it's lead poisoning, all those things. You can't find metrics for Indiana, and Spencer in particular. What is the rate? What are the public health issues for us? What do our people die from the most? What are the illnesses that are afflicting us? We hear conjecture about it. We know that something's going on with these little clusters that someone mentioned about. And you have to kind of go dig those nuggets out. But I would hope that whatever this plan that gets submitted as key performance indicators that actively talk about public health issues that are going on and that have actual measurements. I can't find them out in the health department. Maybe you guys can. But you can't talk it. So it should say reduce pollution, create pollution reduction jobs, and improve public health. And public health, we know, is going to end up having cost savings, whether it's what you pay in your premiums or what we pay in Medicaid. Not to mention, so there'd be cost savings there, plus the benefit of quality of life. We talk about quality of place. We talk about walking trails and all that. But if you can't breathe, you're not going to get to walk on those trails very long, very far. Thank you kindly.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Steckler. We have a grazing dairy, retired dairy. My kids are taking the place over now, but it's a 100% grass-fed farm. That's our environmental program that we've got going on. I was encouraged to see the regenerative agriculture that is up there. There's another, probably another step up from that is holistic resource management.
Jerry, point out that your farm's right here.
Oh, yeah, we're what, 5 miles from here. So
And it was less than a mile away from the proposed coal to diesel plant. We were certified organic for a number of years. My angst for the government led me to give up that certification. We've not changed the thing the way we farm. For the people that study such things, I've heard it said that if you want to attain your goal, doing a positive thing is 10 times more effective than reducing the negatives. From my seat, there's no more positive thing that we can do than to educate young farmers, young landowners, gardeners, everyone, yard owners on the regenerative practice. What we've gone to in our food production is something out of the chemistry lab. The biology is completely ignored in most of industrial, in all of industrial agriculture of today. That would solve, if we had more life in the soil, that would solve all of the problems that we're talking about here. I certainly appreciate everybody that in here that watches the numbers and puts a quantitative measure to all the elements. Nature uses everything as a resource. Carbon has gotten beat up to be the arch nemesis. To plants, carbon is what oxygen is to us. If anybody's gone on a high level hike, the higher you get, thinner the oxygen. And when you start feeling that, that's what plants feel when the carbon numbers go down. So to think that the carbon is what's going to kill the planet, it's just nature ebbing and flowing. With a higher carbon content in the air, the plants grow better. They don't have to open their stomata as much, so they don't lose as much moisture. That allows plants to grow in a more arid in the desert areas of the country. In the last 20 years, I hear that the United States has greened, no, the planet has greened by 20%. Can we thank carbon for that? I don't know. But there's definitely does seem to be a direct correlation there. I don't know that Mother Nature is in the red zone as far as the excitement over the climate. The climate is just, it's just going to ebb and flow. Should our goal be to use every ounce of carbon resource on the planet by the time we die? Definitely not. So I'm fully in favor of regenerative or renewable energy sources, but I'm vehemently opposed to industrial food production. It makes no sense at all to pipe natural gas out of the ground to make nitrogen fertilizer so that you can grow a corn crop, so you can reduce the corn down to ethanol so you can fuel your car. I mean, literally, and anybody makes sense of that. You know, every process along the way uses energy to make the next step. Why don't we just use the regenerative agriculture? If you, there was a comment made about how great trees are for sequestering carbon. And I agree with that, but it's not the best. As far as the researchers go, a grazing grassland is the #1 way of producing or of sequestering carbon. If you have any question about that, let's consider the prairie lands where there's out through Illinois, I hear there's like 6 foot of topsoil. And that is where the prairie grasses were growing so tall that as the Conestoga wagons were heading west, they could get lost in there. It's all of that plant material. The buffalo come through, they eat whatever they want. They crap on all of it, and everything gets mashed down to the ground. With biological life in the soil, that all gets digested, and that's all carbon. That the black earth, that's all carbon. So we can mimic that even on our rolling hills of southern Indiana. We've been grazing for probably 20 years now. It's a slow process, but I can definitely see a darkness in the soil. So it's working. If you want some entertainment, look up Alan Savory and his work. He's from South Africa, and they are definitely the Savory Institute is something else you can Google. But for the research that he's done, makes a believer out of anybody. TED Talk, Alan Savory TED Talk, that's another one to look up. So again, if you want to have the most impact, put a lot of effort into education. A friend and I were talking last night, you know, in the lower grades, first grade, second grade, how many classes planted a little seed to watch it grow, to explain germination? But you need to go further and keep building on that year after year after year, and help those kids, those young minds, to understand the benefits of biological life in the soil. When we get that right, our problems will go away. Thank you.
Thanks, Jared.
We can take one last comment, but request you to keep it short. The library closes at 8. We'll have to wrap everything up, but feel free to find us outside. But go ahead.
Good evening, I'm Ryan Meyer. I'm here this evening along with the rest of the group with the Southwest Indiana Citizens Quality Bike. The ADCOs are here this evening. Stand up. I know most of us, yeah, rest of the group stand up. Okay, you can see the positive impact for 5 years. Back in 2011, as was mentioned before by Rock Emmert, with an issue with miscanthus, which was totally non-green. I think it was Massachusetts one even voted out that miscanthus and using it for energy production, but that dragged on for years. I was in the State House, went in there with crutches through the snowbanks and to listen to two of the legislators that were attorneys, and basically they told us, well, vote your people out of office. Well, this is fast track, so it was voted in, and basically here, about after it was voted in the same room here, they had aspects of with closed meetings and stuff, and basically, you know, there was so many ways or way around it, but somehow that closed that plan issue. So there's a lot of issues with IDEM. We talked last night was looking how we can plant the seed of hope and how we can use that $5 billion. That plant 5 years ago was at 3.5 billion. So that is a huge chunk of money if it's used right. If we don't take half of it and use it for administration, that gives us, or even if we use a tenth, that still gives us, you know, 4 billion to use and put to good use. So let's use this as a seed of hope and get groups together, whether it's SWICAL, Sierra Group, you know, I got on and on. There was 70,000 FFA students. So my aspects of the future generation is our youth. Get them involved in education, give them what they need. Science, STEM is big, make it fun, make STEM fun. You know, and along with other groups, there's a lot of leadership groups. There was one in 7 counties that I'm involved in. And so either work with these other groups and as intermediaries and to report to you, or by county, that was how the leadership group came through. And that was supported by Eli Lilly. And, you know, I had you petitioned to be part of the group. And so you had a community interest project and you were involved. So, but it was a very dynamic aspects of the counties coming together, listening and looking at goals there. So use those mediums, use critical thinking to look through the processes, involve all groups. There was a group from Washington DC between on the blog and with looking at how you got industry and government business, and to work together instead of against each other. So to look at the net goal. And so I guess one question I have with the 5 billion, how much is going to go to the big energy groups if they petition? Because myself I've been blessed with a lot. I was blessed with being able to go to Purdue. I have a degree in landscape architecture, and that involves a lot of urban planning. And that's what disturbed me considerably about that plan of Dale. It wasn't just about air quality. There was the water quality that went with it. It was urban planning, the railroads, the dust. If you've been over in Granite City outside of South St. Louis, where it was a big depot, during the war, they were bringing barges of coal and dust for 3 blocks heading out of that plant because they didn't have proper control. The tiny city of Dale could have been sort of neat and tidy. It could have been a dirty black, if it, because those issues weren't addressed into the initial permit. And I'm talking to another engineer, and the same way with the miscanthus, the controls by the state weren't strong enough. And at that meeting, they said, well, get people elected to get those basic requirements increased. And so how we do that, I don't know, but you need to look at all aspects of urban planning. And anyway, I'm excited and still have hope. There's a great group, how you can build upon this interest tonight. And I see your actions in your face. So I believe you're truly here because you want to be and not just because you're getting paid. So, but there was some, meetings that, it seemed like it was just, like on you had to do it to get your 5 billion. And so hopefully that's not, because there was another meeting I went to, instead of visions of putting a bridge over the lake. Well, use your dam, put a small bridge and save your $3 million for the bridge. But they told me to come back later on and after meeting to talk to them. And I did that. So we don't have time this evening. Write a plan up. I said, that's what you're here tonight for. So hopefully you're here to take this and move on. There is hope, and even despite my struggles with the U.S. Department of Agriculture that dealt with with the nursery in 2012 with drought. And so I did the proposal, went through them 3 times, and basically my idea was with no rain was to drill a well, even though the chances were limited. And so anyway, it ended up that I made during the 3rd time the presentation to try to do it. It said, well, this will empower me to grow my business, the landscape in the nursery. So, well, we can't do that. This is, they didn't call it a Band-Aid, but you can haul water, but you'll pay you that, but you can't do anything that will improve your business. And then I was even to go, I was so upset with the USDA with the garden centers. Anyway, I went into the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The lady was real nice, but since with all the other aspects of 9/11, they didn't allow people to talk to anybody in the USDA. But and then just recently, again, dealing with a little more, I did get 90 cents on the dollar. Okay, so anyway, I did get the part of the grant, but they were too nitpicky with invasive species because there was probably problems with property lines. And so they kept $80 with 800 just because we didn't follow property lines, but I told them I did. So when you're looking at goals and expectations, figure out fudge factor in, so it's just not hard lined. And if what did help was helpful is that they had, with administrative costs to help me with the grant writing to get that $800 for that 10 acres. So look at those dynamics of how you're distributing that money and how it's available to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
I realize you only have 10 minutes. I'm only gonna take 2, maybe 1.
Let me,
On behalf of,
real quick, if you're willing to stay later, I know we can keep this library.
if you're willing, but I know you're probably ready to.
I don't want to impose on the library. We committed to them that we would only stay until 8, so. Oh, you are the library.
I don't see that Dr. Norma Pryline made it here yet, so I'm compelled as a healthcare worker to speak on the behalf of the healthcare community. I'm a physical therapist. I've been one since 1980. I worked 21 years in Colorado, and when I came back to Ferdinand, I was born and raised here. When I came back to Ferdinand, it just slapped me in the face. I mean, it was like night and day when I said almost my first week there, where are all these cancers coming from? They're like, everybody's got cancer, where, you know, it was a big marked difference between Colorado and Southern Indiana, and it was undeniable. Dr. Norma Pryline has invested a lot of her own emotional and financial and time commitment to this cause. I've known her all my life. She has spoken locally, nationally, internationally. She's well respected in the community as a pediatrician. She has undeniable proof that our infant mortality rate is skyrocketing in this area. And I've been with her personally when she's had to hold these babies in her arm. If you have ever held a baby dying in your arms that didn't have to die, then you would have a very deep emotional drive to help do everything you can to correct this issue. If you've ever seen a cancer person suffer, bring it back to a humane level and think about your family, your friends, your local community, but more importantly, even the next generation. What do you want to hand off to them? And the science regarding like infant mortality, they just kind of want to sweep that under the rug, but it's undeniable proof. It's not something that's theoretical anymore. Babies are dying from pollution, and that's something that is very close to my heart because I'm touching people with cancer every day, and Norma touches infants every day. And so I just want to open your hearts to the humanity of this and not just the financial and the other impacts it has on your very near family and friends. Thank you. Thank you for. I'm sorry, my name is Charlene Urbancic. I'm a physical therapist. I was on a faculty member at Regis University for 12 years in Denver, and I came here and now work at Deaconess in Evansville. Thank you.
By the way, Dr. Pryline just texted me and said she could not make the trip, a baby coded, and she's still at the hospital. So, lives in only Illinois.
Can you clarify something real quick so everybody's aware? I think you said there were 46 states that was able to get the grant, and that grant total is 4.6 billion. That could be divided between 46 states.
So 46 states were awarded planning grants by the EPA. That this planning grants will be making a plan that we will submit for the to be competitive for the 4.6 billion. So we're still in the process of the planning. That's why we're here tonight, to hear your voices, hear your thoughts on the plan, additional actions we can take.
So will one state get it, or could it be divided up between 3 or 4 or all 46?
Yep, so all states are competing for the grant, and the EPA will select who is the most competitive plans to be to be split among the states. Yeah.
To clarify a little bit further, the grant is in 2 phases. We are in phase 1 of the grant right now. Phase 1 is a formula grant, which means any state that wanted to participate and completed a full application got the money. So all we had to do here was complete an application, say that we're committed to working through the plan, and we got the 3 million. Can everybody hear me back there? Phase 2 is the competitive pot. Phase 2 is the $4.6 billion pot that we keep referencing. The quality of the plan that the state puts together in phase 1 will determine how much money we get in phase 2 in the competitive piece. So EPA plans to award grants ranging from 2 million to 500 million, I believe, depending on the size and scope of their activities and the quality of the plans they put together. So that's what we're aiming for, as high quality plan as possible, so we can get as much money as possible in phase 2. Does that help?
You got 3 million now.
We got the 3 million now. We're using that money to go all around the state and do these meetings, to do the greenhouse gas, the emission analysis, the inventory, put together a lot of things on behind the scenes on the air quality side. And then from that, we'll put together the priority climate action plan and eventually an application for phase 2. Does that help?
It does. Can I ask you one more question real quick? Is your company working for other states?
No, we're not.
Okay.
Okay, just one real quick question. When you submit the application, who reviews the application? That's submitted to the director of item to review, or does it go to the governor?
EPA will ultimately review the application.
EPA will make the decision.
Right.
From the submission of the application, which organization within state government is going to review it?
We'll coordinate with the governor's office and all of our partner agencies.
It's possible that if you write a climate action plan that is perceived as being anti-big business, big manufacturing, the state can tell you not to submit it. Or you could submit a plan that the EPA accepts and then the state make a decision not to spend the money. I mean, Tennessee rejected healthcare funding from the federal government. What's to say that Indiana would accept the money from the EPA?
Like I said, our goal here is to put together as high a quality application as we can to be as competitive as possible.
Required stakeholder participation, you would not be doing this.
So I talked about there just a little while ago, $5 billion to state of Indiana for a 3-year grant. The state gets a percent of every dollar. So there's an incentive for the governor to go ahead and sign off. I'm just saying, yeah, it's. So.
All right, I want to be respectful of the library's time, so you want to your closing remarks.
Can I just have a closing statement? Because it kind of goes with what she said, and it really goes with what everybody else said. And I took a class when I was at IU in the late 90s called Human Impact on the Environment. Why did I take the class? Because I needed a science credit. I didn't want to do biology. So I want you to think about, it stuck with me this whole time. They talked about building roads, how much it impacts the farmers, how much it impacts everything around the forest, everything. Don't blame IDEM. You are all humans making decisions. The legislatures are all humans making decisions. My dad died 29 years ago yesterday, November 7th, 1994, of cancer, because he was a Vietnam veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange. Some human made a decision to spray the fields. Some human sent him out in that field. Somebody was responsible. I don't know who. I don't care how much money you get from that. You're dead, right? 29 years. I've had no father because some human made a bad decision. The coal plant in Dale. Somebody at IDEM, I don't know who's all IDEM here. I think are you the only one? We have a handful. Okay. Someone at IDEM thought, let's let them pollute the environment even more than already acceptable. Why is that allowed? Are you going to now give my children, give me cancer? We know Agent Orange was a bad idea. Are you the next approver of Agent Orange? Are we going to look back on this and think, that was a good idea. Let's let them pollute the entire southern Indiana because somebody has an idea that hasn't even been proven. So disappointing from IDEM to watch this happen over the years and to fight the citizens who cared and won. But why did that have to happen? Why did we have to fight for our health?
Here.
I love the parks. I live by the forest. I was at the park earlier today. I was at the forest the other day. Great, give me more parks, give me more forests. But when you burn the forest and the pollution is so bad that government literally tells you to stay in your house, what good is it to have a forest a mile from my house that I cannot enjoy? I was in New York City the week after it was so polluted from the Canada forest fires that you couldn't even see across the city. I mean, we weren't even supposed to be outside in New York City. So there's things we can control and there's things we can't. We can't control the Canadian wildfires. We can control the guidelines that IDEM has that we are not. What is the point of a guideline if you're just gonna approve the next guy who has a couple $1 million to spend? What's more important? And the Spencer County politicians kept saying economic development, economic development. Really? Are we gonna build another cancer center? Is that economic development?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
You are humans making decisions, human impact on the environment. It matters. I appreciate when someone makes a decision that protects my life, that protects our community. It matters. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Just to reiterate, your voices are so important for this grant and its implementation. We really want to hear from you. Please fill out the survey. Please share it with your friends and family. This really is an exciting opportunity and we want to make the most of it. So thanks you for coming out. We'll be outside to take more notes if you'd like to chat with us. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.